Created by Imtiaz Ali, Sony Liv's latest series Dr. Arora sees the wonderful Kumud Mishra play a self-taught travelling doctor who runs a sex clinic to help people with all their sex-related shortcomings. But given that sex, and in particular sexual dysfunction in men, is a taboo subject, a number of his patients, many of whom are high-profile politicians and officials, see him in secret. But Dr. Arora isn't just a medical practitioner, he's also something of a therapist. Because sex is never just about sex, it's also about relationships and people, driven by anxiety, insecurity, fear and doubt. His patients come to him for the physical manifestations of their problems, sure, but often what ails them goes deeper. It's low self-worth, shame and the fear of rejection. It's a teenager in the throes of puberty being made to feel like a freak for wanting to masturbate. It's a police chief who's scared to be seen with Dr. Arora in public for what it might do to his image and reputation. It's a young woman who must coax and lie to her new husband to get him to see Dr. Arora because she knows that there's no way he'd go willingly. There's a lot to love about what Dr. Arora is trying to do. I like that it shows middle-class Indians as sexual beings and that it examines how desire is demonized. The show is in many ways trying to be India's answer to Netflix's delightfully charming coming-of-age series, Sex Education. And of course, what else would the Indian version of that show look like if not a tragic, uphill battle attempting to bust taboos and normalize discussing sex and sexuality? That and an ongoing exercise in managing and massaging the fragile egos of men. Because at its core, Dr. Arora is a delicate takedown of masculinity and just how ridiculous it is by exploring the conditioning and vulnerabilities of men.
अरे नहीं वो तो कर लेते पर हम कर लेते हैं.
Both on the pathetic, hilarious end of the spectrum as we see multiple scenes of men stumbling and fumbling as they try and open up to the gentle Dr. Arora about their issues, right to the more worrying, aggressive extreme of insecure men lashing out. It's all about projection and repression, mardangi and ego, shame and reputation, where the worst case scenario is not an actual medical issue or a severe marital crisis, but people finding out about it. Because after all, what will people say? Like Netflix's Sex Education, this show too has a very clear agenda of educating its audience. We know this because every time a new patient visits the good doctor, their diagnosis flashes on screen. And I'm all for unapologetic messaging in a series like this as long as it's baked into a narrative and characters that we feel for. But despite directors Sajid Ali and Archit Kumar's self-assured filmmaking, the triumphs of Dr. Arora get lost in a painfully uneven, overstuffed plot. It follows such an odd narrative structure that I really struggle to follow and make sense of much of it. The show's 5 writers, Imtiaz Ali, Arif Ali, Sajid Ali, Divya Prakash Dubey and Divya Jory don't seem satisfied following the straightforward new patient every episode structure. Nor do they follow a single continuing story. It's somehow neither and both at the same time. So we get patients whose cases and arcs can last a few scenes, or be recurring over several episodes, or be left unresolved entirely. Instead, the writers get preoccupied with larger, messier, more ambitious arcs about political campaigns and strange commentary about irresponsible journalism, all at the cost of a cohesive, coherent narrative. At times, it feels like Dr. Arora and his practice become a supporting character in his own show. By the last episode, I gave up entirely in trying to understand what was happening and why. I genuinely think that the show's 5 writers got together with the specific agenda of making me feel dumb considering how much of the story went straight over my head. There's also an ongoing comedic plot thread about a sadhu called Firangi Baba whose problem is that every day, hordes of women turn up to his ashram wanting to sleep with him, but he's having issues performing sexually. Forgive me if I don't find it all that funny when you consider the wider context of God, men, and consent. There's also something strange about the show's approach to its handful of female characters. Only one of Dr. Arora's patients that we spend time with is a woman. And there's even a strange flirty married woman character for some reason whose entire presence seems to be about manipulating men. Thankfully, as the good doctor, Kumud Mishra is the best thing about the series as the warm but quietly tragic doctor. I love his heartbreaking backstory and how his dedication to helping others is rooted in his own failed marriage. I could genuinely watch endless scenes of Kumud Mishra facing overly defensive male patients only to wear their guard down with his gentle, supportive presence. He's a sensitive, wonderful character who deserved a better show. For me, Dr. Arora shines most when it's at its simplest. A doctor, his various patients, and their humanity. Somewhere buried within the show are a set of lovely little love stories about couples and people who have lost all hope, who visit a kind doctor who enables them to feel possible and alive and ultimately helps them get their happy ending. So would I recommend this show to a friend? I mean, I guess if that friend could watch it and explain most of it, considering I didn't really get what it was going for.